How do avoidants respond to your silence? At first, they feel relieved. Your silence removes their immediate emotional pressure, which is something that they're always trying to do, right? This tends to be why you will see them avoid conflicts or dealing with things because they feel emotional pressure due to the simple fact that they know that they can't control the outcome, right? When you are working through things sometimes, you guys are both going to have natural responses and you're going to be vulnerable and express things, which is going to cause certain emotions to just naturally come up. And that's something that they perceive as a threat to their emotional stability due to this avoidant attachment style because they want to maintain certain control and only feel certain emotions that they want to feel. So space gives them that safety that they don't have to deal with those things. And on top of that, it confirms their belief that space equals peace because they don't have to deal with anything, right? Which can be so frustrating for you on the outside because here you are going through so many different emotions all at once and they just seem to be thriving, happy as if nothing has happened. But what we have to understand is that this is going to be temporary and there's going to be a time and a place where they're going to feel the magnitude of your silence if you continue to do that. But the only difference is that it's going to be magnified because they have suppressed this down over amount of time and it's all going to hit them at once. The second way that they respond is that curiosity starts to build quietly within them. They start checking your social media to see if there's any new changes. This is very important because if they see things as status quo, they're going to feel pretty much confident that things are okay and that maybe you're just taking the space away from them to kind of gather your thoughts, and then you're going to do what you always do, which is to break that silence to work things out because you know deep down if you didn't, this person was not going to do that. And that's something that they've grown so accustomed to seeing happening that they're pretty confident if they don't see any major changes on your social media pages. But if they see things changing, like you're hanging out with certain people, doing different things, or whatever that might be, that will inevitably cause this curiosity to start to transform into panic because they're starting to realize things are different. They feel differently and you're responding completely different than what they would expect. And that's something that they don't want to see because they can't feel confident that things are just going to go the same way that they would expect. But on the flip side of this, you don't want to start posting things to try to make it seem that way because just because they're an avoidant doesn't mean that they can see through that. And honestly, if they start to see and understand it to be that way, they're going to feel even more confident to stay silent because they know that you are still emotionally connected to them. But essentially their goal with being curious here is that they want to know if your silence is intentional or is this just a play to kind of play a game of chicken with them to get them to maybe feel the magnitude of losing someone like you and want to attempt to work on things. Which segues perfectly into the third response, and that is their sense of control begins to fade. Now, this tends to happen if you are consistent with your silence. If you aren't reaching out to them or whenever they try to breadcrumb you to reach back out to them, you don't respond, this is where that control is beginning to fade for them. And why that's so big is because an avoidant has this illusion that they have control over pretty much everything. And this is because of their attachment style making them believe this because that's their way to try to make sure that they can control the situations so that they can avoid having to feel any unwanted emotions. But when you start to show that you are taking back your control, which you've always had, that's something that they begin to be scared of because they don't know how to respond to this, right? They become so used to being in control of things that they don't know what to do outside of that. And that makes them feel uneasy because they know that you are in charge of your own emotions and feelings and what you essentially want to do from here on out. And they know deep down that their persuasion over you is slowly starting to diminish at this point. And that's something that is a big thing because without that, there's a really good chance that you are not going to put up with things the way that you normally would, which is probably going to lead you moving on entirely from them. So essentially, your silence creates the exact uncertainty that they hate. And this is something that becomes a big moment for the avoidant where they're starting to feel the real consequences of potentially not having you in their life because they're taking things more seriously and understanding that this could be a sign of that. Which leads to the fourth response, and that is anxiety starts to creep in under the surface. They wonder if they went too far or pushed too hard. And this is important because, again, an avoidant doesn't want to completely push you away. It may seem like that's their intention, but it's not. They want to simply get away from you or the situation so that they can avoid having to deal with it and expressing and feeling those emotions. And then when they're ready, they want to come back and just resume things as if nothing has happened. And that's something that they believe is always how things are going to work. But when that doesn't happen, and when they start to realize that you're responding differently, they start really having the fear of losing you. And that begins to replace their confidence that you are always going to be the one to do whatever is necessary to work things out. And that's something that an avoidant needs to feel, not in a way that you are trying to be evil or get revenge on them, but they need to realize the consequences of not making an attempt to try to work on this avoidant attachment little by little, because it's honestly needed if you guys are both going to have a healthy relationship where the both you feel supported emotionally. And that's something that they're really not understanding, typically due to them being so used to this avoidant attachment style and adopting it, and it's been so ingrained in who they are that they think that this is how things need to be, and that's their mind convincing them of this. But at the end of the day, they have to kind of have that shock to their nervous system to understand that this is something that really needs to work on if the both of you are going to have a legitimate chance in working things out. So with all of this happening, all of these emotions are beginning to hit them at once, and they're really coming to the realization of how much you mean to not only the relationship standpoint, but also in their life. And that's a big thing for an avoidant, where they're really seeing through these excuses and distractions and understanding their true emotions and feelings towards you, which is they love you and they don't want to see you go. And the fifth and final typical response is that they consider reaching out, but pride holds them back. They will do things like rehearse messages in their head or even check your page to see if they can muster up the courage to just reach out to you and express to you how they're going to feel and be vulnerable, essentially. And instead of acting on that, they tend to not, because they are in fear of how you are going to essentially respond. They don't know what you're going to do, and this is something that could lead to you rejecting them altogether, which is a big thing that they're always trying to avoid. Rejection is the number one thing that they tend to not want to have to experience due to their caregivers essentially rejecting them typically throughout their entire childhood. So rejection can be very triggering to them, so they try to do everything that they can to avoid any situations like that. And that's when you may see them try to do small things like reach out to you in an indirect way by maybe posting something on their social media page that they know that you would understand only, or even maybe reaching out to you to say, hey, just want to check in on you and see how things are going, or some other random message that's kind of confusing to you because you know that they're trying to get in contact with you, but there's no really direction as to why they're reaching out. And this is their way to hopefully have a snowball effect in getting you to want to reach out and engage with them, because that will give them some insight that you are still there emotionally with them and you aren't just simply moving on. And that's why it's so important for you to consider when you are going silent on them to do it from a standpoint where you are basically officially going no contact with them, which means not only blocking them from being able to message you, but also blocking them on your social media pages so that they can really consider the magnitude of not having someone like you in their life. And I'm not suggesting that you're doing this from a place of trying to get back at them. It's more of you trying to hold them accountable and understand that you aren't going to play this game anymore, because that's really what an avoidant needs to understand. They need to know that you aren't just going to be willy-nilly going around doing whatever is needed for them and just ignoring your own needs and wants. The both of you should be able to contribute to the relationship as close to 50-50 as you possibly can. Now, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the case, because there's some days where you can only give 20% and they have to give the 80, or vice versa. But there needs to be an attempt of both of you consistently doing that for each other and trying to do whatever is necessary to work on this relationship, because that's what it typically takes in a healthy relationship. But it's honestly going to be very hard for them to do this with this avoidant attachment style being such a prominent way of being for them. And that's why you really have to ask yourself the hard question of, is this just you getting the space away from them to essentially give yourself a break and then you're going to re-engage with it? Or have you done everything that you possibly could to try to make this relationship work, and you're realizing that you need to prioritize yourself yourself, which means you doing what's necessary to heal and move on from this relationship. And you know which one of these it is, and you have to have the courage to take action on that. Even if there's a part of you that still wants this relationship to work and love this person, you may just be at your wit's end and you're exhausted, and you realize that as of right now, you can't make things work with this person because their unwillingness to try to work on this attachment style. And that's not on you, that's on them, and this is a cross that they're going to have to bear. But what is on you and what you need to do is prioritizing yourself and figuring out what you need to do that's going to best support you now. I hope that you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.